What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fat Boyz Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network, coming at you live on the Fantasyholics Podcast YouTube channel. I'm Bo. As you can see, no Brant today. We did have scheduling conflicts again this week. Still wanted to be able to get something out to you guys. Still wanted to make sure you guys knew we were going to be live this Sunday. And really, honestly, the only reason I'm here is because I wanted to take a victory lap on the back of that Falcons dominant win on Monday night against the Buffalo Bills. What a game. What a game from Bijan Robinson, Drake London. That Falcons defense is stingy. We might be getting to the point of the season where we have to start talking about, you might start fading folks when they play against the Atlanta Falcons defense. But I did bring a pocket-sized version of Brant with me for the show today. So he is kind of here in spirit. So we'll refer to this as Pocket Brant for the rest of the show. All jokes aside, guys. I thought it was imperative to get on here today and talk about some guys that I think could be league winners that I think you could go out and get at this point of the season still. Getting ready to start week 7, obviously kicking it off Thursday night with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Week 7, it's time to start making those moves in fantasy. We talked about it a little bit last week on the show. We also talked about it Sunday morning on the show this week as well. It's time to start making those moves. It's time to start going all in for this season. And I'm going to talk about some guys today that I think could be absolute league winners that I think for the most part you can acquire. Even the one that is a little more pricey, I think you're going to be able to still go out and get at this point in the season. And that window may be closing on that particular player very quickly. But we will start with the two that are a little easier to acquire for a little cheaper price. First one being Evan Engram of the Denver Broncos. If you're an avid follower of this show, you saw Brant and I talk about it all off season, right? Evan Engram was the piece that was missing from the Denver Broncos offense last year. Bo Nix had a heck of a season, but was really without a tight end all season last year in Denver. And Brant and I were both very excited by the addition of Evan Engram to the tune that we thought he was going to be a top 5 tight end this year, and that didn't happen, right? But the last couple of weeks, it's starting to look more what Brant and I had anticipated, and getting Evan Engram to that point where he could end up being a very, 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 very good tight end down the stretch. And there's still enough juice in that lemon for him to squeeze and get himself into the top 10. We're talking about a guy that in the last 3 weeks has seen 6+ targets consecutively. That's important, right? Volume is king. Bo Nix 3 weeks in a row has been looking Evan Engram's way. And again, when you're talking about a tight end getting 6 to 7 targets a game, that's pretty good production for your tight end position, with the exception of, your Trey McBrides, your Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren this year. You're wanting a tight end that's getting 6 or 7 targets, right? And again, when you mention those 3 aforementioned tight ends, whether it be McBride, Bowers, or Tyler Warren, all 3 of those guys are probably not one of them is available in a dynasty format because A, if the team's not good, they're young tight ends, so they're just going to hold them for next year. And B, if the team is good, they're not giving you a tight end, right? So those 3 are probably unattainable. So what do? You got to go look for somebody like this Evan Engram, who's getting some volume, starting to get some targets, starting to be a focal point of that offense. And again, Brant and I always talk about it on the show, how we use Dynasty Daddy to go look at the trade database. It pulls, data from real life fantasy players such as yourself. These are real life trades that are taking place. It's not like keep trade cut where your grandma could get on there and say that she thinks this player is better than this player. These are trades that have happened in real leagues across, all the major formats where people actually have skin in the game. Evan Engram's gone in the last 24 hours, like 3 or 4 different times for the cost of a 3rd round pick. And again, when you talk about what you're getting out of Evan Engram right now this season and what that 3rd round pick amounts to, it's almost foolish to even slow roll it and think about it. You just got to smash accept because, guys, let's be honest with ourselves if we can for a minute. For every Puka Nacua that we drafted in the 3rd round of our rookie drafts, there's a Jalen Reagor or a Jalen Royals or the list goes on and on with these guys that end up being misses every single year in those 3rd rounds, right? Like 1st round, you're getting a player that can contribute to your fantasy team. A lot of times in the 2nd round of our rookie drafts, they're dart throws. It may feel like a can't miss prospect until they miss. And so again, if you're asking me which side I prefer to be on, whether it be a third round dart throw or a guy like Evan Ingram with 3 straight weeks of 6+ targets, especially at the tight end position, guys, I'm smashing that Evan Ingram side. All right. Moving on, I do have a running back to talk about here, and this one's very intriguing to me because a lot of people are talking about his backfield mate as being one of the biggest trade candidates out there at this time in the season, and that's Kendre Miller of the New Orleans Saints, referring to Alvin Kamara as his running mate. A lot of people are speculating Alvin Kamara could be on the way out, right? The New Orleans Saints are so far from competing. I know Alvin Kamara has meant a lot to that fan base and a lot to that franchise in the time that he's been there, but it's almost to the point where it feels like it's criminal to continue to hold him, right? So if some team comes calling and presents a fair offer, I think the New Orleans Saints would be foolish not to take it. I wouldn't be shocked to see him move, right? And a lot of people are going to try to chase that value of Kamara. Where does Kamara go? Oh, he goes to the Chiefs. That's super appealing. Oh, he goes to, one of these other teams that can't establish a run, and the New England Patriots, and makes himself, super fantasy relevant. That's going to leave a lot of touches for Kendre Miller. And this is a guy who's already getting some touches in the backfield and already looking pretty darn good with the touches that he does get. 3 games, he's had the last 3 games in a row with 9 or more touches. And in 2 of those games, he finished as a top 40 back. So on just, a few touches, this guy is already producing fantasy-wise, and it's only going to get better if he gets more snaps, right? So to me, a third-round pick, again, we're talking about how big of a gamble that is. Why not take a gamble on a guy whose situation could be very good in just a few short weeks, right? Not to mention next season and beyond, he's still going to be under contract. Kamara's probably gone at the end of the season if he doesn't leave before. Kendre Miller is going to have value next season as well as trade value this offseason when other people start to realize, hey, wait a minute, Kamara's gone. Somebody's going to be toting the rock in that backfield. Who's it going to be? So again, Dynasty Daddy, several times in the last 24 hours, Kendre Miller has gone for a third-round rookie pick. Again, lots of value there, guys. You're talking about a guy in Kendre Miller that if Alvin Kamara leaves, could be a top 20 back every week for the rest of the season. If that's not a league winner at a third-round pick price point, I don't know where you find one. I don't think it gets much better than that at this point when you're talking about taking gambles on a backfield that feels like there's changes a brewing, right? It's not necessarily the Cam Scatterbo, Tyrone Tracy thing. Kamara's the guy if he's there, but how long is Kamara going to be there? How long until the New Orleans Saints start saying, let's see what we got? We got a long rebuild ahead of us. Let's see if we got anything in any of these guys, right? And I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Kendre Miller down the stretch be a league-winning type of back if Kamara gets dealt. And if you gamble a third-round draft pick on it, man, that's an insane return on investment, right? And let's not get it twisted, too. I think it's imperative to mention if Kamara doesn't go, it's still just a third-round pick, right? Those are less than a 10% hit rate on a third-round pick. Kendre Miller's getting fantasy value and producing right now. Sometimes our third-round picks don't do that, guys. So again, it's worth noting that third-round picks, honestly, even second-round picks, I have no problem moving those in drafts just because they are such wild dart throws. They are such unproven commodities. And in the season, trading away those second and third round picks means less than it does in the offseason because those picks, the value really isn't there for those picks until the offseason. That's when they start getting, high priced. But if I can get an Evan Ingram or a Kendre Miller for a third round pick, I do that all day and twice on Sundays. So just food for thought there. Those guys are both guys. But for a third round pick, if things continue for Evan Ingram or things change for Kendre Miller, you're talking about a league winning type of player. And at the end of the season, you're going to be looking back saying, hey, I gave up a third round pick for this production. Definitely worth doing. All right. And then on to the more expensive side of this league winners. I'm going to talk about a guy, and I had to do this on an episode where Brant wasn't here because I think Brant would have tried to move through the camera to come after me on this one because he is a firm non-believer in this player, and that's Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. Nico's currently a wide receiver 29. Currently the wide receiver 29. Not been great this year. It's been ho-hum, right? And a lot of people, you could say, well, it's CJ Stroud or the offense. There's no run game. Or you could point your finger at a lot of different places for this Houston Texans offense struggling the way it has. But currently, Nico's price point is about a first-round pick. I've seen some first-round straight up. I've seen somewhere you've had to throw in a first round and a second rounder potentially. That's on the high end. A lot more of the first and a third to kind of get the deal done. And as a Nico, if you're a Nico owner, selling him, I could see being hesitant to do it straight up for a first, because if things go well with that first, you're hoping it turns into a Nico Collins. So, getting that little extra value on top in another pick is definitely intriguing for those guys. But again, for you, if you're trying to push the chips all into the table and say, hey, I'm going for it this year, hopefully that's a late first round pick for you. And then at that point, that means it's a late second or third round pick. Who cares, right? Who cares if you're getting a guy like Nico Collins? Again, we're talking about him having a down year right now, wide receiver 29, down year. So worst case scenario, he's still high end wide receiver or low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. And I'll say this, the injury concerns are real for Nico, right? Like that's one of the big red flags. Nico's can't seem to stay healthy. He did it once 2 years ago. And that year he's wide receiver 6. I think, let me double check my math. I think he was wide receiver 6 on the year he stayed completely healthy. But again, when you're talking about Nico Collins, wide receiver 9 the year he stayed healthy. He played 15 out of 16 games that year. So again, you're talking a top 10 wide receiver. That's 100% worth a first round pick, and they're hard to come by for a first round pick. A lot of people want multiple picks for a wide receiver that you're talking about in, terms of a first round pick, or a top 10 wide receiver, excuse me. However, here's the big thing for me, the big underlier that I think makes Nico appealing to me is last season, where we talked about, the atrocious sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. One of the worst sophomore slumps we've seen in quite some time, right? With CJ Stroud, where year one, rookie year, everybody was on the bandwagon. Everybody was talking about this as a future stud. This guy's going to be the one to dethrone Patrick Mahomes in the AFC. You name it. The comments were made. They kind of, that offense and CJ kind of fell on their face year 2. Still trying to struggle to find that offensive identity this year. However, last year, with that being the case, with CJ Stroud having, again, one of the worst sophomore slumps we've talked about, Nico Collins was still a top 12 wide receiver 5 times on the season last year. 5. Finished as wide receiver 22 in PPR last year on only playing 12 games. Almost 50% of the time, he was a top 10 wide receiver when he played. Okay. Why is that important? He was wide receiver 29 right now, and he's only had 1 week as a top 12 wide receiver this year. Once it's happened. And I think you're talking about this Houston Texans team that is slowly starting to build that momentum, right? It was bad the first couple of weeks. They had some bad losses, some really low point games to start the season out, against the Rams and Tampa and Jacksonville. But their season's starting to open up. They're coming off of a bye week. They got the Seahawks this week, the Niners, Denver. And then you talk about Jacksonville, Tennessee again, Buffalo, who we just, again, watched the Falcons torch. There's no secondary there. Indy, Kansas City, Arizona. And then to start your fantasy playoffs, it's Arizona, Vegas, Chargers. You can't ask for a better matchup out of a wide receiver 1 potential type player, guys. So again, if I'm sitting there and I can give a first or a second round pick to go get a guy like Nico Collins, and I'm prefacing this by saying it is a push the chips into the middle of the table. You're all in. You have to win the ship to make this worth it. Nico Collins is the guy that could put your team over the top. If you're right there, if you're a contender and you're even close to this, it's a full-fledged push the chips in the middle of the table, see where they fall, and go all in after it. And I think if you get 4 or 5 more weeks this season of Nico Collins being a top 10 wide receiver, you're talking about him helping you win weeks, get you to where you need to be. I think there's a lot of, I guess I should say it makes that price point of that first round pick seem very silly, right? Because again, you're talking about first round pick value. You're hoping these guys help you win weeks. Marvin Harrison was the first overall pick in a lot of dynasty, rookie draft picks. How many weeks has Marvin Harrison won on the season, right? Or again, I could do this all day where we talk about guys that just don't seem to hit. Caleb Johnson was kind of that guy this year that was in the back half end first round pick. Jury's still out. We haven't seen enough, but he ain't helping you win a lot of weeks right now, right? So again, it's a gamble, but if it's a back half first that I'm giving up for a guy like Nico Collins, who's a proven commodity, to me, that seems very viable. Again, I'm not advocating to constantly sell your draft picks. 9 times out of 10, it's really not the greatest of strategies to always pivot off of those draft picks. We kind of have to have those draft picks to get those youth players in. But again, if you've got somebody in your league who overvalues draft picks and undervalues current talent, it's a worth gamble to go out and trade those picks for some of these proven guys. So again, 3 league winners, I think you can get, at fair prices. A couple of them I feel like are steals, and Nico feels like a fair price to me. So last thing we're going to do on this show today, since I am rocking this solo, I'm getting tired of hearing my own voice, which means you guys are probably tired of hearing it already too. We will go over my underdog plays for Thursday night, as long as that's okay with you, Pocket Brant. You cool with that? He says yes. So let's get into these underdog plays this week, and I will get you guys out of here for the week. All right, guys. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we do start the week off this week with the Steelers and the Bengals. So I've got my underdog lineup in for this Thursday night already. I'll put that out there for you guys. Brent and I have had some marginal success this year. Not job quitting kind of stuff here, but we've done all right this year. So I wanted to make sure I kept it going. So my lock of the week this week that I think is something that I'm fairly confident in. Brant and I don't do it a whole lot. I think we've each done it once this year on our underdog plays, but I'm going to do it again this week. I've got Chris Boswell to go higher than 1.5 total field goals. The last couple of seasons, Chris Boswell's been almost automatic for the Steelers. Been a guy that they get down inside of the opponent's side of the field. He's almost guaranteed even the 50-yarders he's got. Coming off of a very good week for the Steelers against the Browns last week, I think Chris Boswell finds a way to get 2 field goals. Staying with the Steelers side of the ball, I've got Jaylen Warren to have a higher than 11.5 on his longest reception. This is a guy that has been slowly getting his pass catching work doubled, if you will. Every week he seems to be more and more involved in the pass catching game than he was previously. And I think this week against a Cincinnati Bengals team that we'll see if they can find a way to keep it close. This week that Joe Flacco didn't really look great last week, but it is a new week. So we'll see if they can try to keep pace in the AFC North with the division leaders and the Steelers right now, or if the Steelers just add another rung to the ladder of climbing to chase them, I guess. How do the Bengals find a way to stay close? By getting Jamar Chase the ball, right? We all know that. Any head coach would know that. Any fan would know that. Any degenerate bettor would know that, right? So that's why I've taken Jamar Chase higher than 9.5 targets. I think he gets peppered this week. Joe Flacco kind of didn't really throw the ball that well or all that much last week, but I think he does. I guess he did late in that game against the Packers, which he did, earlier in the season with the Browns as well. But, short week. getting in with the Browns. I think this week he'll have a little bit more practice time under his belt, a little bit more familiarity with the team. I think you see Joe Flacco be a little bit better, and 9.5 targets is what gets it done for Jamar Chase this week. So there you go, higher than 11.5 for the longest reception for Warren. Higher than 1.5 field goals for Boswell, and higher than 9.5 targets for Jamar Chase is my underdog play for this Thursday night. Again, guys, Brant and I will be live 10:30 Eastern time for the live start sit this Sunday. We'll be here for about 90 minutes. If you guys want to come hang out, pop in, check us out, see what we're up to. Love to hang out and chat with you guys. Make sure you're following and subscribing to the Fantasy Holics everywhere. That way your notifications are on. These guys are super quick with their information, man. Super quick. They're getting it out there. It's not just something as quick to say Emeka Egbuka is not going to play week 7, right? They talk about the fantasy fallout of that, what that could mean for your fantasy needs. So make sure you give these guys a follow, whether it be to stay up on current things or just to come hang out with the Fat Boys and talk food. So I think that does do it for me on this week's episode. As always, stay hungry and stay fat, my friends.